are you doing?
Good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
All righty. Glad to be around.
Okay. Just going to give it a few more. Most of the people on are people I already know, but wanted to see if the general public, but just so you know, we're going to record this. And it's part, I don't know if we'll get mission people joining, but we will give access to people from different missions around the world. So this will go under the struggle for the right to water. And that's how we're doing this.
Okay.
So. We'll make it. I'll start out asking a little bit about the history of struggle in Detroit. Then we'll focus a little bit on 2014 and the UN coming to Detroit, and then come into now, like what's going on now and why. But I would ask you to end with three concrete asks of these different missions that listens. So they only have 2 minutes, so it needs to be concise, and just if you could make each of your asks
Are
really
are, are
simple.
you saying that? Are you saying that I have 2 minutes to make this
No, no, no,
speech?
no, no. The missions when they actually question the U.S. So let's just say Mexico's questioning the U.S. They have 2 minutes to make to make their
Got
ask
it.
on water, right? When
Okay.
they actually do the universal periodic
Got
rule.
it. Got it. Okay. Very good. I got you now.
All right. Give me another. I'll probably start at 3:05, but give me another couple of minutes. All right.
Not a problem. I'm going to minimize this and go back to that page that I sent you yesterday,
Okay.
so I can remember the three asks. And
Okay.
I ain't going far.
Okay. afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. We will start in about a minute. My name is Robert Robinson, and this Truth to Power Thursday edition is brought to you by the Universal Periodic Review Task Force, also known as the UPR Task Force, which works closely under the auspices of the U.S. Human Rights Network. We are preparing for the U.S.'s visit to the Universal Periodic Review, which will take place on the afternoon of November 9th. And today's Truth to Power presentation will be on the human right to water, and it'll feature a speaker from Detroit, Michigan by the name of Maureen Taylor. So just a little background. What is the Universal Periodic Review? The Universal Periodic Review is a unique mechanism, of the Human Rights Council aimed at improving human rights situations on the ground of each of the 193 United Nations member states. Under this mechanism, the human rights situation of all UN member states is reviewed every 5 years. This is the third time that the US is being reviewed. 42 states are reviewed each year, 3 working group sessions dedicated to 14 states each. These sessions are usually held in January, February, May, June, October, November. The US was originally scheduled to go before this review in May, but due to COVID, it was postponed to now. So I want to move right in and introduce the person who's going to really speak about violations of the human right to water in Detroit and Flint, Michigan, and even speak in general about what is happening in the U.S. over a period of time. So Maureen Taylor is a lifelong soldier in the war against the poor. She has served as state chair of Michigan Welfare Rights Organization since 1993 and was elected treasurer of the National Welfare Rights Union in 1994. Ms. Taylor is a dedicated community activist who represents public assistance recipients at Michigan's Department of Health and Human Services Office over case disputes. Along with other welfare rights members, she conducts local and state DHS policies and works with elected officials and program administrators to draft policies and procedures that protect the poor and low-income families. So on a personal note, as an African American and as a Black American, we tend to rely on one another for support and structure, and we learn from one another. And Black women in particular hold an important role in our families. And for me, those women were always referred to as your aunties. And it's not necessarily a blood relative that represents an auntie. Sometimes it can be somebody who mentors you, who works closely with you, whom you support. And for me, as somebody who's only been doing organizing for about 12 years, 2 of the people that I learned a lot from in a short period of time are representative of the Welfare Rights Organization. That's Maureen Taylor and Marion Kramer. And for me, to have Maureen in this conversation today is a pleasure. There was some struggle about whether I should do one-on-one or not, but I'm enamored to have a one-on-one conversation with Miss Maureen Taylor and really try to go a little bit deeper and try to shine a spotlight for the international community on the struggles that go on in the United States, a country that likes to put itself out there as this great democracy, as this place where anybody can make it. But as Maureen and others who have struggled and people in the African American community can tell you, it's not a land that's open and available to everybody, and it's not the democracy that it builds it up to be. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you all to Miss Maureen Taylor.
Hello and good afternoon. A pleasure to be with you, my dear. And Rob, before I get started, just tell me, how long do you want me to take to paint this picture? What kind of time do you want me
I
to
will let you
use?
start off with the history. Take about 15 minutes to explain the history, and then I'll lead you into some guiding questions, which will take us through the UN visit in 2014 and kind of where we are today and why it's so important to put this issue before the Universal Periodic Review.
Okay. All right. Well, I work with the organization called Michigan Welfare Rights, and I serve as state chair. Now, I give you that context because I've been involved in the fight for the rights of low-income people for several decades now. So here's the history that people people need to know. And this is the abridged version. All right, there's a book that's called The Warmth of Other Suns. And that book chronicles the exodus of African Americans, Latinos, many Native Americans from the Jim Crow South, and details that group of folks who were running from Jim Crow, running from lynches, running from all those kinds of things. And it details the group that went east and ended up in New York and Harlem and that period of time at that area of the country. It looks at the group that went west and settled in Sacramento and San Francisco and some of those areas out on the coast. And then there's a group that came through what I always call the Middle Passage. And that group that came north ended up in Pontiac and Saginaw and Flint and Chicago and Gary and, of course, Detroit. Along with that passage, here we have Henry Ford, who is now developing something called an assembly line. And the assembly line, of course, is connected to automobile manufacturing. Up until then, it was piecemeal. People were not working together in a unified way, but some kind of way. And I'm sure it's one of the workers that told Henry Ford, let's do it like this. So here's the conveyor belt, and everybody has a part of that job. What ended up happening was you had manufacturer opportunities for cars that it just absolutely exploded. And so here you have these people of color. You have white people who are just so desperately poor, living in places like Kentucky and Tennessee. They're on their way to Detroit and places around us where you have these mega, and I hate to say that word, I'll change that word. We have large factories, we'll call them that. And at its height, about 110,000 people worked at this one single plant called the Ford Rouge. And at the Ford Rouge, you had a transmission plant, you had a rubber plant, you had a brake plant, you had all the different parts. And each of those buildings created a part of what a car would end up being. So at the end of all of these vehicles, the automobile was driven off the lot and ready for sale. So there was a time then at places like Detroit and Flint and Saginaw, where all these big factories and whatnot were, we were what you call Motown. A lot of people know what that is, Motor Town. We built cars for the world. And part of that is, I'll just show this. We were able to pull together a cultural look. Now I'm holding up some of my favorite beads. We wear red, we wear green, we wear yellow, we're bright. And we did all of those things in an effort to try to pull this automobile activity together, which took millions of people out of poverty. So in Detroit, we were able to not only buy a house, build a garage, and you know the phrase, two cars in every garage. We had a car in the garage. We had a chicken in the garage. We had transportation around the world in the garage. We had an opportunity to reach out to the entire world. We looked fly. We were fly. We didn't need anybody else. So here you have this upstart city like Detroit that didn't need anybody else. We have more money you can check a stick at. So we were oftentimes portrayed or portrayed as the group of people that wanted to help others. So we set up water plants outside of the city of Detroit and extended pipes to Sterling Heights, to Grosse Pointe, to all of those other communities as far as Flint, Michigan, because we had a water department that was second to none. So we had all of these economic benefits, and people of color and folks that were white and living in these poor communities. We brought them into with their racist ways. You had to fight with them to, stop acting like this. And then there just came a time where we were able to find a way to get along together. So that's the economic background. The floor of all of this says that what we were able to do along the way of building cars and became the car capital of the world is that there were certain benefits that came. And here is where we get water. We're right in the middle of the Great Lakes. We have the clearest and precious water on earth. The largest reservoir of water, the fifth largest reservoir of water. So we had all of the necessary things that we needed. It began to change in the late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, when computers started to come online in the factory. It was not unusual for huge revenue, lynch road assembly, Mac stamping, one of the plants. They all had to close down for a period of time for what they call changeover to start creating new cars for the new models. And it was 3,000 people at a plant. It closed. 3,000 people would be called back. Well, Rob, there came a time when 3,000 people lost their benefits for a period of time, but we all knew it was temporary. But 3,000 didn't get called back. 1,000 got called back, and the other 2,000 went someplace else. And then the following year, the 1,000 were laid off for changeover, and 500 were called back. And then once we got inside to see what was going on, what we realized was that there were computers and different forms of automation and technology that took over those jobs. So we went from 2.2, almost 2.2 million people living in Detroit, and today we're at 700,000. You cannot lose 1 million people in a city without there being some economic devastation under the guidance of the quote, quote, current city mothers and city fathers. So what started to happen is always the benefit comes up, and oh, what we should do is lay off city workers and hire private people. That never works, but that is what happened. Somebody said you better declare bankruptcy. I don't live in a bank here. So water, and we owned our own water department. And what they did was start to privatize sections of it. And of course, when we met you some years ago, we keep you on standby at the airport all the time. Rob, you got 20 minutes to get to the airport, and we need you here within the hour. And we don't hit nothing else. Get to the airport right now. Get in here. So we have friends and comrades like yourself and a few others that we had to reach out to because it was insane. Water department, when I first was aware of this situation, and I'll do one more minute on this and let you take this back over. We were told that I went to the city of Detroit and asked, what is this about trucks coming into the neighborhoods, slowing down, and two or three people jump out of the truck, and it was moving like that. So all these calls were coming in the welfare rights all of a sudden. So when I made an appointment to visit with people, friends at the city of Detroit, the first list that they gave me had 59,990 addresses on it that were scheduled for shut off. I thought it was a error, a grammatical error, and they told me it was not. And of course, that's when we exploded, contacted everybody we could, People's Water Board, all the different organizations that were available at that time, and came together to do something to stop this. That's how we found our way to the United Nations. That's how we found our way to the Universal Periodic Review. That's how we found our way to Leilani and the wonderful Katarina de Albuquerque helped stop this nightmare. So, wanted to give you at least that background. Thank you, Rob.
So thank you so much, Maureen. I think it's important to frame this. You mentioned that the city had gone into bankruptcy, and it seems to me, Detroit, a city that's about 82% African American, 40% of those folks living below the poverty line, that they put that bankruptcy on the back of those very poor people. So one of the things we presented to this Universal Periodic Review, as we've been reaching out to different missions around the world, is the structural racism that exists in the US. So I think this just sort of underscores that point. just put aside, and I'm not casting it aside. I think it's real important. The police shootings of African Americans, which we brought to the last Universal Periodic Review, that obviously continues, and is a big issue. But I think at the center of that is the structural racism issue that we need to bring to the forefront. So let's talk a little bit about that visit. And if I'm correct, it was in October of 2014 that
Yep.
we had the visit of the rapporteurs. Talk a little bit about how that process happened, um, what that visit entailed, and why it was important to the people of Detroit.
Well, okay. We had been trying to reach out for help because our cries and our tears and our pain was not being recognized by local officials in Detroit. The governor was of no value. We couldn't find anybody to help us with this. And there was this underlying thought that if you can't pay your water bill, we have every right to disconnect it. Now, that's not written anywhere, but somebody with a crayon or magic marker must have put that someplace. But that is what we were fighting.
But don't you need
So,
water to survive? You need water to survive as a human being, correct?
well, most people would say you have to have water to survive. And we understood that part because that was written down and that was a scientific analysis. But the folks here, they took a different approach. So we didn't know a lot about the United Nations. I've been writing some of everybody. And we found you, and we found another lady by the name of Pat Jones, who was working with the Methodist Church. And we started to ask you guys, would you help us? Who might be able to help us? And we know we're probably not going to get anybody to respond, but we didn't know anything else to do. Here we in Detroit, ignorant people, don't know nothing about what's going on with the United Nations or countries someplace else, because we quote American exceptionalism, and we don't have this problem. So we had to fight through all of this. And of course, it was Pat who put us in contact with Madoki Sachi, and you put us in contact with Katarina, and you put us in contact with Leilani Fahar. And to my great surprise, I writing letters. You all gave us the right emails and the right addresses, and I was stunned when we got a call to say, if we came, what day would you want us? I damn near fell on the floor. What? So we laid out a plan. They called back, and I didn't know Leilani. I didn't know Katarina either, but I did not know about who was a special rapporteur in terms of affordable housing, and did not know. Well, it turns out after we reached back out to them and verified that they were who they said they were, and we set up a date, set up a time. Again, we got you out to the airport. Get out to the airport because you have to come in here and help us with this. And they came. And they were here for 3 days. They were here on a Friday, on a Saturday, and a Sunday. And when they got here, I had already rented a red car and went out to the airport to pick them up and had the hotel waiting for them. And we had a group of people with balloons and whatever else because we were just so stunned to have these international women coming to help us. And that first day, I can't remember if it was the first day, the second day. I think the first day we had the meeting with attorneys and people whose water had been shut off and that kind of group. But it was that second day, Rob, that this was and we had the bus to take certain routes throughout the city and explain that the electric blue arrows on the street in front of the house meant that this was an address that was slated for disconnect. We were thinking we were just gonna ride around, but of course these women said, "Nope, stop right here. I want to get off." And they got off and went to the house and knocked on the door. Nobody knew we were coming, and everybody admitted them, and they were able to talk one-on-one with moms, with kids, and it was a fabulous event. I was already embarrassed because nobody wanted to meet with them officially, but suddenly that second day, the official openings happened. And that last day, which was that Sunday they were here, they were invited down to the mayor's office. And I went too, and Reverend Jill, we were all down there together. And the very first thing, the mayor had all of his departments at the round table. And the very first thing they started in on, talking to these international experts, was we're not going to let these two white women come to Detroit and tell us what to do. And you know this story, Rob. I was so shocked and ashamed. I was looking for chairs to throw at them, city of Detroit employees, and it was Katarina and Leilani that kind of tapped on the table of the city, castigated them, and how you gonna come here and tell us, and you don't know our economic situation, and how dare you, and all this kind of stuff. And Katerina, at the end of their vicious attacks, she said, "Well, thank you so very much for inviting us." She was so humble. And what she said was, "I need to just explain to you. We don't care anything about your economic foolishness. We don't care anything about your description of your financial problems. You are part of the United States of America, and there are rules, and you have to follow those rules." And boy, she gave them an education. At the end of that, Leilani talked, said the same thing. "We're not interested in your ridiculous reasons for why you're shutting people's water off." And it was at that point where the mayor said something like, "Well, I wish we could have helped you with the press conference that we had previously scheduled for you to have right here." And Katarina said, "No, no, no, not a problem. We already have space set up at the hotel. So, we knew that at the end of the day, there would be some kind of reason why we wouldn't be able to have this international summary. So please join us, Mr. Mayor." Oh, at the hotel where we have to go now because we have international and national reporters waiting for us. I was never more proud of being a girl. And I went down there and got that red car, picked them up again, and took them back to the hotel. And they gave a press conference that made us all cry. And all it is that they verified what we were feeling, and they just explained that what we had been doing was correct. They left that night. The mayor and nobody else could do anything about them. Took them out of here. They got an Uber to the airport. So in case there was any kind of problems, they left and said goodbye and blew some kisses. Oh Lord, what a 3-day event. All right.
Thank you, Maureen. Very powerful story. And if my memory serves me correct, visits with family. I mean, there was crying, there was hugging. Hearing those stories, they were emotionally moved. But I think Katerina said it best when she said, I'm in a country that is the wealthiest country in the world, and people talk to me about third world countries, and I see better treatment in these third world countries than I saw in Detroit. And I thought that was a powerful
Yep.
statement. And I think another
Yep.
thing that came out of that conversation was Al Jazeera English had done an interview with Mayor Mike Dugan, and Mike Dugan wanted
Yeah.
to castigate Michigan welfare rights, and he said to Al Jazeera English, Michigan welfare rights invited their friends from the international community in New York and other places to shame Detroit. And Al Jazeera English came
Yeah.
to me and
Yeah.
asked me for a
Yeah.
response. And I said, they didn't have to invite us to shame Detroit. Detroit did a good job on its own of shaming itself, right? But what they wanted was support,
That's right.
and we came
That's
in to
right.
support them and use the power of grassroots organizing to get the kind of support we need to shine a spotlight on this issue,
Absolutely correct.
that was we all
Yeah.
perceived as a
Yeah.
human rights violation, and we needed that validation from these UN mechanisms. So, Maureen, let's fast forward a little bit. It's 2020. There's a pandemic going on. Um, we're getting messages from the Center for Disease Control telling us certain things we can't do. You must wash your hands over and over, right? You have to spend 20 seconds washing your hands. People should shelter in place, but we know, just like any other major city in America, Detroit has some street homeless folks, but this access to water is still an issue. It is resurfacing again, right? It seems that Detroit Energy and Power, if I have the name wrong, you'll correct me, but DTE, I believe, is the name, is going through some other changes where they're pulling away services from people, right? Utilities from people, and going through utility shutoffs. So tell us a little bit about what's going on now and why it really is important for us to get this issue before the Universal Periodic Review.
Okay, Rob, these are issues that are connected, okay? And the connection first starts with our governor, Gretchen Whitmer, of the rap community, the rappers. They call her Big Gretch, okay? And you may know, and others on this call may already be aware, that we've got a militia group that had threatened to kidnap her and execute her. And the reason was she's doing too much. She's making us be safe. I can't get my hair cut. I can't go to my gym. So the governor's got to die. I mean, it's a madness. But really, what this is an opportunity to tie into the fact that when we approached her and said, there are people throughout this state, not just in Michigan, that we are struggling to get and keep the water on. You have to wash your hands immediately. She issued an executive order demanding that all water in Detroit has to be turned on, and issued a secondary mandate saying not just turned on, but let's allow people to make a $25 a month payment. If they can't pay that, here's the governor talking, I'll pay it. So that was a major victory. And throughout the state, Detroit, Flint, Muskegon, Benton Harbor, everybody who was without water because they couldn't pay for it, she mandated all the water to be turned on. Then we're up to the masking question and washing your hands. So that pretty much brought everybody into the same place. And the fight now has come down to what is the problem with people wearing a little bit of cloth on your face? So, we have this American exceptionalism. I'm an American. I have rights. You can't make me wear a mask if I don't want to. So here we are in America, 4% of the world's population and 20% of the folks who are infected with this condition. African Americans, Latino Americans. I'm on this task force, and I just heard this information yesterday that the worst community in the Detroit area or in the Michigan area is in the Upper Peninsula. They're suffering the third highest infection rate in the area. And we're talking about my Native American sisters and brothers. I mean, it's just an outrage. You can't make me be safe. You can't make me stop infecting somebody else. And then we come to this newest outrage. DTE Energy is the name of the utility company that provides lights and gas for 2, 3, 4 million people. And what they did in March when the pandemic, we didn't know what it was, and we're trying to hear this. They instituted a moratorium, no shut off, turned everybody back on who's got lights and or gas might have been off. Michigan is in the north, if people don't know it. It gets cold here. So in March, they shut all, or they turned on every account that did not have lights and gas. So that happened in March. Here at the end of September, they took the position, well, it's been long enough and the pandemic is going on. And what we're going to start to do, because we have this right, is we're going to start looking at folks who are behind on their payments, and we're going to issue shut off notices. And again, here we go, it's October now. We have the right to disconnect lights and gas. So we're talking about turning off refrigerators. Oh my goodness, that's where we are today. And of course, we're back into a fight again. Utility companies, privately owned, do not have the right to torture or to cause pain. And almost all of these instances are directed at the homes where there are low income, low wealth households. If you're in a fight and you can't pay your water bill or your light or your gas bill, and your name is Illich, or your name is Carnegie, or your name is one of these rich folks that owns a stadium, they call that a dispute and they're trying to work out the details. If your name is Miss Jones and you've got an argument with a water bill, a light bill, or a gas bill, you get shut off and you can dispute it after your services are shut off. So this is not only a massive attack against communities of color, this is a total attack against low income folks. Rich people do not suffer these kinds of insults and these kinds of threats to life and limb. You have to be poor on welfare or homeless or earning just 20 cents more than minimum wage for this to happen to you. So this is James Brown, what he says. Welcome to America. That's where we are.
Ms. Taylor, I really appreciate your perspectives. And one thing you've always raised my awareness on is it's not only a race issue, it's a class issue. And I
Yes.
appreciate that perspective. That's something you've always informed me on and constantly made me think about that. So, with respect, I'll just two fast observations before I open it up to a couple of questions. I know you have to leave before the top of the hour, and I appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are, and I know how many demands are made of you. But I remember in 2014 visiting, and one of my first observations was while folks were going through these struggles for shutoffs, I remember a golf course having water watering the greens overnight, and it was a public course, and I was enraged, just because to think of what was happening to the people of Detroit while this golf course was getting all the water it needs, but the people who are human can't have it. Problematic, right? Huge problem. and
Yes.
and raising awareness on this issue. And then I think the other issue is, as we took that bus tour with the rapid tours, or actually it was at the town hall meeting at the end of that at Wayne Community College, where a woman stood up and
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about her monthly bill being over $1,000. And that monthly bill was over a
Yep.
thousand dollars in her small apartment because it was a busted pipe, and her apartment was closest to that busted pipe, and they just put it on her. And because she wouldn't pay that $1,000 bill, she stood to be shut off. And to see the rage on Katarina and Leilani's faces is something that I'll never forget. And then finally, I'll just say,
Well, you remember the place was packed.
that's right,
You
that's
remember
right,
the place was
that's right,
packed,
standing room
and
only.
they were outraged because we could only let 50 or 60 people talk.
Right.
But the place was packed. But this is what was going on.
It was a
Oh, boy.
fantastic display of human interaction, because the people of Detroit said somebody is finally listening to us, right? And they showed up in numbers to open up and share their story. And it just reinforced the power of storytelling amongst those directly affected, and let people know they're not alone, and their voice is going to leave Detroit and leave Michigan and get out around the world. So I thought that was a very powerful exchange, those days that we spent there. So with that, there are a few people on the call. I want to give 5 or 10 minutes. If anybody has a specific question that they want to ask Ms. Taylor about the situation before I ask her for some recommendations that she would like to pose to the Universal Periodic Review before we close out the call. So any questions? Anybody have anything they want to ask Ms. Taylor? Martha Schmidt, unmute your mic and go right
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I just was wondering whether you think municipalities where there still is public ownership of water should make sure that their local ordinances have a right to water. I've been working with some people in Seattle area who during the crisis in Detroit to try to get people to do more preventive work here. And I just wondered what you thought about that.
In 2010, we were able to sponsor and host the U.S. Social Forum in 2010 in Detroit. And we had some 35,000 people that came, and it was just a remarkable event. Now, I mentioned that because before that, I went to Seattle. I went to what do y'all call that? The Northwest Pacific area. And I toured Oregon. I was in Washington. I was in Seattle. I was in Tacoma. I was in all of those places and talked to people, a lot of college students and a lot of religious places that I was able to go to. And that's came to say, to warn you, you better start paying attention If
Mhm.
the situation economically begins to become unstable, the first thing they want to do is take over your water, and
Yeah.
it's public now, but you better start paying attention because it is not hard to get to find a way to correct and then collect
Hang on, Miss
public
Taylor.
water and
Folks,
to talk about
respectfully,
it's going to be better managed. And we warned everybody we could.
Yeah.
And I went out there at least, ooh, Lord, I was there 2, 3 weeks. And every day I was in 2 or 3 different places to get people to come to Detroit and to get people to let them know there's some things going on with water before 2010
Mhm.
to let people know ordinances. You better get your city council and you better get some duct tape and go in there to wherever your mayor is and make certain that your mayor understands ahead of time. We are
Yeah.
not going to tolerate this. So,
Yeah.
yes, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Prevention ahead of time.
Mhm. Thanks.
before we move on to other questions, one question I want to pose to Ms. Taylor is, if you could, a little bit of an elaboration on the struggle in Flint, just in Flint, if you could, because I know you and Michigan Welfare Rights were supporting those struggles in Flint also.
All right, we're talking about in again United Nations and our friends from a place called the Northern Territories. I have to explain what that is later. I'd never heard the phrase before. And our welfare rights chapter in Flint started calling us and saying there's something going on here. Almost a little bit under 2 hours, and go there. And we met with folks in welfare rights and a whole bunch of other organizations. And they started talking about our water in April or May. I've forgotten what date, has been switched away from the Detroit Water Department, clean, pristine, the pipes, everything great. And we have an emergency manager that was hired because Flint is now being quote labeled as bankrupt. And water was changed away or switched away from Detroit Water to a private organization that pretty much took the public water hose and put it in the Flint River. And you could see tires going by. You could see dead dogs going by. You could see branches of trees going by. And the Flint public water was suddenly picking up water out of the Flint River. And so we go up there and try to get some understanding. What the hell is this about? And that's about when the folks in Flint began to realize that the emergency manager said, you know, emergency managers are like dictators. Once the governor supports that, what they say and what they do is we have the rights to manage government without being elected. And the only people we can get mad at us is the governor. So he appointed this emergency manager up in Flint who said, we're not going to pay Detroit anymore to bring our water here, to clean our water, to make certain that it's available throughout the city of Flint. And we're going to go to this private company here who said they can do it better. And I can still remember the first meetings where they had, I don't have any in front of me now. They had bottles of water, clear glass bottles, and the water was brown. And I'm talking about like if you put iodine in it, and some of the water was green. And the emergency manager said, "There's nothing wrong with it. Here, watch, I'm going to drink it." And of course, you know, I didn't ever drink that water. General Motors sent a letter, and the General Motors letter said, "Dear Mr. Governor, we've decided to not use Flint water anymore in our Flint automobile manufacturing locations because what we have determined is that after a month or 45 days, your water is starting to corrode metal. And so you might want to tell the people in Flint maybe they shouldn't drink it." Well, that letter got lost. And so June, July, and August is when somebody said, "Oh, what's that letter? Where did that come from?" And they started to read it. And of course, by then, the damage was done. we were already at that time taking bottled water as best as we could to Flint every weekend. And this is throughout the state. We were taking water every day, every weekend. Thousands of people were dropping off water. And the only thing I can tell you is that was, I tear up thinking about it now. When I would take water to people's porches and they got a great big old dog dish on the porch. And I look, okay, knock on the door, take 2 or 3 cases of water, knock on the door, and run back off. And somebody would come to the door and they'd look, oh, you're Maureen. We know where you are. You can come on in. No, I can't come in because I see you got a big dog. And they would tell me, no, there are, I'm tearing up thinking about it. There are no pets in Flint. What are you talking about? Well, we didn't know. Nobody told us. So we gave water to our dogs and our cats and our birds and our gerbils and all this kind of stuff, and they all died. Rob, I never heard anything like that before, and I would stand there, but go to the next house and hear the same thing in the next house. And I thought, what kind of country is this I live in? What kind of horrible place is this where the residents have to tell you there are no pets in Flint? That's what happened.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for some incredible testimony. I want, before we move out, I see Carrie McLean has joined us from the U.S. Human Rights Network. Carrie is a coordinator of the Universal Periodic Review. And I'm going to ask Carrie, because as I end, I'll talk about our next Truth to Power Thursdays. But there's work being done by the U.S. Human Rights Network to support groups like Michigan Welfare Rights, myself, and other members of the U.S. Human Rights Network around the UPR. So, Carrie, if you could just talk a little bit about the work that the network does and your role at the network in advance of the UPR, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, okay. Well, I'm sure you've already talked about the fact that the U.S. is being reviewed for the third time on November 9th. There's so much that has happened over the past year or so leading up to this process. Last year, civil society organizations submitted their reports to the UN, talking about different urgent human rights issues in the US. About 140 organizations submitted reports. Unfortunately, this current administration did not engage much with civil society in preparing their report. They submitted it to the UN, I think around August. And to say that it's disappointing is an understatement. There are many omissions, no mention of COVID, for example, and many misrepresentations. But anyway, that it just shows you how critical it is that civil society organizations are involved in this process, because we're making sure that the different countries that will be engaging with the US during the UPR, that they have accurate information about the human rights situation in the US. So really in the past, I'd say 3 weeks or so, we have been organizing lobbying where different organizations have reached out to the missions in Geneva to set up virtual briefings where they describe the situation on different human rights issues. And I think that those have been impactful, I believe so. And I guess we'll find out on November 9th when we see what types of questions the US has asked and what kind of recommendations are made. But in a nutshell, that's what we've been working on. And we'll do a debrief after the UPR session. And then, there's still work even after the session happens to try to lobby the US government to accept the recommendations and then later on to implement recommendations. So.
Thank you, Carrie. And if you could just tell the people where they could find more information about the Universal Periodic Review process.
Sure. Please visit our UPR2020.org website. We've got a ton of information there. And also, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any specific questions, but there's a lot of information at upr2020.org.
Thanks so much, Gary. Really appreciate it. Ms. Taylor, I know you have other business to tend to, as I do. I go to another 2-hour webinar after this, but if you could, I'm going to ask you in concise terms to give me 3 recommendations that you would like missions from around the world to really state to the U.S. during that universal periodic review. If you could just go through those 3.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned it to me earlier, so I was able to water down those 3 things. Uh, I would ask my sisters and brothers in other parts of the world if you could find a way to urge people in Michigan. Now, I don't want to be selfish. Across the nation, you all, anybody that knows what's going on, you can see we having a real terrible problem in getting people to address proven precautions. So if we can get our sisters and brothers around the world to say, we urge you all in America and in Michigan to put the mask on. It's not a sign potent you might be. Just put the doggone mask on. And so you can join the precautions that the rest of the world is trying to engage. That would be helpful. It would be helpful. The second thing is if we could get my sisters and brothers from around the world to urge Michigan, the governor, please keep the water on. They're destroying her reputation. They're trying to threats to kill her. It's just so awful. But if I could get people to think about ways and letters and emails and whatnot to talk about, keep the water on in an effort to stop the spread of the virus and try to flatten the curve. And then more recently, it's not going to do well if we have people in Michigan who are about to get their heat shut off or about to get their lights shut off. So again, the third thing would be if I could urge my sisters and brothers nationwide, if they would write DTE Energy. That's the name of it. D like Detroit, T like Tom, E like energy, and energy. DTE Energy, and ask them under what auspices would you be turning people's lights and gas off? And as an international spokesperson, raising that voice, that choir, that chorus of social justice and tell DTE, don't do that. Those would be the 3 things I would ask my sisters and brothers internationally if they could find a way to make that happen.
Maureen Taylor, State Chair, Michigan Welfare Rights Organization. Thank you so much for a real passionate talk today and really helping us to understand the struggle that has not only happened because of COVID-19, that has been in existence in this country probably since its creation when you talk about structural racism, but continues to manifest itself through these different avenues. And water is one of them. There are violations of the human right to water in the U.S., and Michigan is the state that is the poster child for the U.S. Maureen Taylor, Michigan Welfare Rights State Chair, thank you very much. Thank you to you and all of the people of Michigan. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Taylor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. I got to jump off for another call.
See you, Rob. Aloha.
Josh, let's talk.
Sounds good.
Okay, right now, okay?
Sounds good. You want to just stay right now?
Oh, yeah, why not? Okay. Wow, she was really wonderful.
She was. That's what I was hoping it would be. That was the idea of them. And Catherine Flowers was great too.
Yeah.
And so we sort of had water and sanitation covered. So that's really good. And next week, Leilani is doing an event. So we thought not to compete with that one and pull them together for the last one.
Oh, so there are going to be 2 more?
One more next week.
Wait, no. So when is Leilani doing an event? I don't understand.
Next week on the 29th.
She's doing an event. So what's happening next week then?
It's just the Truth to Power event is next Thursday with Leilani talking. And
Oh,
she also has a video and some other stuff, but
so
that's
you're
all.
saying you decided not to put her this week? I don't know. You didn't explain that well, but it's okay.
Real quick, let
I'm
me try.
glad.
Next week, we were going to have Human Rights Cities with Vicky and Joanne probably, but then since Leilani was already going to do a big event and it's about cities, we said let's just have that as the event instead of adding one more.
I see. All right. So she's confirmed.
That's all.
So she has confirmed?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, you guys should really make sure you advertise it well. You're going to have a big speaker like that.
We try every week, but I tried, after we talked, I talked to Mary. That's what I was going to talk to you about on Wednesday, was hoping you saw that everyone was reaching out so that you could send it out too.
Okay, so here's the thing. I told you that, after Salima got back, we had a staff meeting, and it was an issue that the comms person was receiving information pretty last minute. Like, she's not here all the time, and she does other things. And so, we just don't want to be responsible for the Truth to Power.
No problem. And so the other thing.
However, if the information is put on the Facebook page,
yeah,
it's very easy for us to just link to it from our Facebook page. That's why, you saw that I mentioned to Mary, I said, make sure you add it to the Facebook page. It's very easy for her to just link to it. And we've already shared the link on the UPR 2020 website anyway. But, when she's just beginning the general social media for the day, it's very easy if it's there for me to say, hey, can you just link to their page? And she can do that. Or if you tweet it, and then you can ask her to retweet it, things like that. But as far as emails, there's it's just complicated. But the last minute info, it just was a problem, Josh.
Yeah. No. And it's all good. The only thing I was calling you about yesterday was I was just checking in, make sure you're doing well. And then the other thing was we talked about earlier. I have that TV show next week on Tuesday. And I was wondering if what we want to do, because we both were like, oh, that's such a great opportunity. So it's between us what you thought, because I didn't want to not work together on it. But if you're too busy, that's cool too. But I thought we could have a cool week before the UPR. I still have that TV show at 11 o'clock on Tuesday.
That's 11, whose time?
Hawaii time.
Okay, so for me, that's going to be, let me see. All right, so like it's 10 a.m. for you right now. Okay, I think that could work. Yeah, that could work.
Yeah, so I thought if you want, and then we could think of maybe one or two other people you want as well, and we can just do a cool UPR, and then we can also have it as they record it all professionally, so that's good, and then we can use it from there.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, Josh, actually. All right, hang on one second. Let me just check one thing on the calendar. Make sure I'm not. Okay. Yeah, so that's going to be about 4 p.m. my time. And okay, good. I don't have any meetings or anything at that time. So Tuesday, October 27th. Let me just add this to the calendar. Josh's TV show.
It's called Cooper Union.
I just really love that. I think it's great. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's the plan. Now, you would like me to speak about what specifically?
I thought we could just do it as we want. Either it could be a big informative one of what is the UPR and why it's important. We can start that way. And then we can maybe cover all our working groups we have that are participating. And I was trying to think, maybe we invite one or two working groups.
Okay, who?
It's just the sweetest one, it seems like, is Martha. and
Oh.
Denise. I don't know. I mean, Denise is everywhere. Like, I love that I wake up at 3 a.m. and there's Denise, like she's on it, ready to go. So, I'm open, but I thought, we could look at who we think maybe needs the more attention and what's the priority areas we wanted to support. That was it. And I
Okay.
thought we could talk about that together. But that was one thing I just wanted to do together because we had talked about it. And that's just what I wanted to mention to you yesterday. So
Yes. All right. Let me think for a second about, or yeah, maybe I'll text you later about who I think we should include.
Yep.
I just want to think about it,
it's just, it's finding the right person that fits everything,
Yeah, that's what I want to think about. So just let me give it a little bit of thought, and I'll text you my thoughts later on that. But definitely it's on for Tuesday. I have it on the calendar. Let me see I don't know if you have any type of image for the program, because maybe we can advertise it, so like if you can send me something, the sooner the better, because for example, tomorrow the comms person is not there.
Okay.
So, if you just have like an image of promotional image for it, then I can send it to her and say, oh,
That
okay.
sounds good. And they will send you a couple emails. So it's not to stress you out, but they'll be like, you are confirmed for a speaker at this time. And it'll be from Think Tech Hawaii.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you later. I know how busy you are.
Oh, no. Please, let's just finish about a couple more things, please, before you go. So did you meet with Nadia?
Yes, we had a great meeting. So we're on for November 5th. She brought in Maya, one of her colleagues, and we have a format, and I'll share it with the subcommittee tomorrow. And then hopefully for the subcommittee, I'll agree. I think they will. It's a pretty good one. And then we'll bring it up at the UPR task force on Monday.
All right. So this is a side event.
Yeah, side event for November 5th.
Right. So, I mean, meaning we don't have to like invite anyone to participate from the missions. We're just having.
Yeah, we'll tell them to please come because it's happening, and they'll probably want to attend because everybody usually does these when it's really happening there.
Right. Okay, and this is actually important for me to know because the network, we got an email from the Office of the High Commissioner asking if we were doing a side event or not. So, and I wasn't positive. So I'm going to take this to mean yes. And I will let them know that we are.
Okay.
And actually, I'm going to send an email to you and Nadia just to like, get some details about the time that you're thinking, etc. Okay, this is great. I think that's a really good idea to do the side event, actually. What else? Wasn't there a statement that was being developed? Are you involved in that?
The one that Rob sent out?
No. Do you remember from the UPR task force?
Oh.
Yeah,
but I was waiting. There was a couple people that were working on that, but yeah, I was working on a draft, and it was just saying how concerned we were, right? And we had a couple other points we were trying to raise.
Okay. Yeah, but not connected to this Laura Flanders email that Rob sent. I mean, I don't know if that could be the same statement, but it came out of either the task force call or the lobbying call from a couple of weeks ago, and people like and I know, I'm pretty sure that Nadia's a part of it. I thought you were part of it too, but maybe not. But definitely Nadia, and I think the people from Access Now, they wanted to do a statement, and I was just wondering about the status of that. But I'll follow up with Nadia.
I was on one meeting with Access Now with Laura, but I think his name Brian didn't participate in that one. He was supposed to, and then he didn't show up. But I can check on it too, and we can just make sure we do get that statement together before the time.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for everything.
Thank you too, Josh.